Well, good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us this morning for our sixth public status update regarding Edna Mahan Correctional Facility. I am Victoria Kuhn, the Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Corrections. As many of you joining us this morning know, we joined together this morning as a result of a settlement agreement entered into in August of 2021 that appoints a federal monitor and provides specific requirements for compliance in a number of areas that impact Edna Mahan Correctional Facility. As I've mentioned before, this administration continues to place an emphasis on a better together approach and building a sustainable corrections community, both within the facility with our custody and civilian staff, our managers, our leaders, with our board of trustees, and with outside stakeholders, advocates, legislators, our reentry partners and community organizations, the formerly incarcerated, and families of the population, and with the number of you joining us here today. As this community continues to strengthen and grow, it continues to strengthen and support the well-being of the justice-involved women in New Jersey. This morning, you will have an opportunity to hear updates from our experts and our dedicated team. Joining us in person this morning are Jane Parnell, the well-respected court-appointed federal monitor, Erin Nardelli, Deputy Commissioner of the Division of Operations, Dr. Darcella Sessoms, Chief of the Division of Programs and Reintegration Services, Christina Chibenko, Chief of Staff, Elena Tomei, Assistant Commissioner of Women's Services, and Ryan O'Day, Administrator of the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility. We are also pleased to have Bonnie Kerness, an exceptional member of the Edna Board of Trustees, joining us this morning via virtual platform, and we will have an opportunity to hear from Ms. Kerness shortly. Before turning the program over to Ms. Parnell, I would like to take a moment to provide a few status updates. With regard to the consent decree, we are pleased to report that the department has established substantial and continuous compliance with 38 paragraphs within the consent decree. As a result, and is permitted by the consent decree and legal procedure, the Department of Corrections and Department of Justice have mutually agreed to the filing of a motion at the federal court to terminate 38 paragraphs of the consent decree. The motion has been filed and is pending with the court, and this is truly movement in the right direction. And for the remaining provisions of the consent decree, the department will continue to remain steadfastly dedicated to substantial and continuous compliance for the health, safety, and welfare of our incarcerated population. With regard to criminal justice reform, I would like to acknowledge and thank Governor Murphy and his team for signing Executive Order number 362, which sets forth certain categories of clemency applications that will receive expedited review, including individuals who are serving sentences that reflect an excessive trial penalty, and victims of domestic violence or sexual violence or sex trafficking who are incarcerated for committing a crime against their abuser or under the coercion of their abuser. This is an important step in recognizing the abuse and trauma experienced by so many women prior to incarceration. In addition, with the women at Edna and the advisory groups, we continue to discuss not only corrections reform, but overall criminal justice reform, gender parity in sentencing, rehabilitative release legislation, and recognizing the impact of the trauma experienced by many women prior to their entering the criminal justice system. We are happy to continue to be working with our legislators on several pieces of legislation, including the Incarcerated Women's Bill of Rights, to ensure that the reform measures put into place to protect our women remain in place, become law, and can never be taken away again. And we thank our legislators for this support. And finally, with regard to the construction of the next female facility, in October of this year, we will reach the 1-year anniversary of the closure of half of the Edna facility. In October of last year, you all may recall, we closed the minimum compound at Edna and opened the temporary satellite facility and honors housing unit. At this time, the satellite continues to operate efficiently, and with improved housing conditions for half of the female population, while we proceed with plans for the construction of the new facility. For those of us, or those of you, excuse me, joining us this morning, we do thank you for those who have visited the Edna facility. One look at the Edna Main existing crumbling facility, and there's no question that the building of the next new facility is essential and must be expedited. In that regard, the state working group, Treasury, DPMC, members of the NJDOC, and others continue to diligently work together for the construction of the next female facility. Since we were last together in February of this year, progress toward the new build has continued. In June of this year, the request for proposals for the scope of work for the architect and engineer were published, thereby publicly launching the project to enable the state to secure vendors to provide design and construction management. The publication of the RFP resulted in greater than 45 vendors responding. Since that time, a walkthrough of the building site was provided to those vendors who responded and were interested. As we look ahead, design written proposals and construction management proposals are both due prior to the end of October of this year. Following receipt of the written proposals, in-person interviews and presentations will be conducted and concluded by November of this year, ultimately resulting in a selection of a vendor for the design and for the construction management for the new facility. And sitting in this seat, I have to tell you, it's exciting to see this critical initiative take shape and move forward. It has been a long time coming. It is a large undertaking, and I'm truly appreciative of all those who are dedicating their time and their talent to this critical project. In all, you're joining us this morning to hear additional updates. I look forward to you hearing from the team, and at this time, I am happy to introduce Jane Parnell. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning to everyone here and to those joining us through the website. My name is Jane Parnell. You've heard this before. I am the federal monitor. I live in Washington State. I had 35 years of experience working for the Department of Corrections in Washington State, several of those being as what we would call superintendents. Some people know wardens, administrators, whatever term you call that. And 12 of those were for the women's facility in Washington State. Since I've retired, I've worked as a corrections consultant around the United States, working primarily with women's prisons and jails. Let me just talk real quickly about how this next 90 days or 90 minutes will be scheduled. The first part, as Commissioner Kuhn has said, will just be an update for you all. If you have questions during that time, there's a link in the chat box that you can send the questions to. And then the remaining period of time after the updates will be that we will be able to respond to your questions. So as Commissioner Kuhn said, that we have just now finished the 3-year settlement agreement that was between the Department of Justice and the Department of Corrections. This was as a result, the settlement agreement, as a reminder, was a result of an investigation conducted by the Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of New Jersey. And after that investigation, the Department of Justice found reasonable cause to believe that the conditions at Edna at that time violated the 8th Amendment. Specifically, the Department of Justice concluded that the Edna failed to protect the incarcerated persons from sexual abuse by the facility staff. Again, that was 3 years ago. And let me just talk about how these last 3 years have gone. I think it's incredibly important to recognize the work that the New Jersey Department of Corrections, as well as Edna Mahan, under the leadership of Administrator O'Day, has completed. it is not an easy task. I remind you that I myself, when I was the warden of the women's prison, was under a settlement agreement. I also keep reminding people that it was probably one of the best things that happened. Many of the processes that we put into place that so many years ago are still in process. And I truly believe that that made us a safer and a better facility. And I see that happening at Edna for sure. My associate and I just finished a compliance visit this past week, and we noted to both staff and in the incarcerated persons that we just finished, August 24th was the exact date of the 3-year settlement agreement. And we asked them very specifically, what changes have you seen in the last 3 months? And staff and incarcerated persons alike noted that the facility is safer in terms of sexual safety than it was before. And that's exactly what the agreement was trying to do and accomplish. And I think it's really, really important to take a minute and to recognize the work again in the last 3 years. It's not finished, and it's not finished because the department and the leadership of Edna is committed to it not being finished. And they do things beyond what is required in the settlement agreement. And I think that's important. I said yesterday to the leadership of Edna, they're not checking boxes and trying to get us out of here. They're truly doing the things that they believe are the right things to do to make it a safer and better facility for those incarcerated persons. Some of the things that the staff particularly told us is the things that have changed in the last 3 years is that they believe there's more oversight, which leads to more accountability. And that they're back to the basics. And when we ask what that meant, just things as simple as making the rounds every 30 minutes, getting out and about and talking to the incarcerated persons and looking to see what's behind closed doors and making sure that those doors that are supposed to be locked are locked. Following policy, just those kind of simple things. The emphasis is now back on treating incarcerated persons with dignity and respect. And that's the expectation. And that was not necessarily, at least the culture that we saw 3 years ago. I always forget if it's deputy commissioner or commissioner. I get confused. No. Deputy Commissioner Nardelli will talk and has talked with you about the cameras and the body worn cameras. And both staff and incarcerated persons have noted that to be such a significant change. The consistency of leadership has been such an important factor that prior to in the last 3 years, we've seen administrators and high-ranking correctional staff stay, and they stay because they're committed to Edna and they're committed to doing the work that has been done and it needs to continue to be done. And that's a difference than we saw 3 years ago. 3 years ago, it was almost a revolving door. We heard staff tell us, we don't even really pay attention because we know that that person will leave in the next 4 months after they've made their rank. So that's an incredible difference. I'm sorry that AC Daniels isn't here today. I know that she's out ill, but I think her leadership and having the investigations happen quicker, that was a huge, huge problem. Many of you probably remember when my associate and I first came 3 years ago, one of the consistent messages we heard was the weaponizing of PREA, and that the incarcerated persons would literally say to the staff, I'm going to PREA you, which actually was kind of a verb in terms of getting them out. And that's not happening anymore. And it's not happening because the body worn cameras are helping to show that the incident may or may not have happened. It's not happening because the investigations are happening quicker. And so those people who are using the PREA, those incarcerated persons who are using it incorrectly are being held accountable for that. So we're seeing now truly just such a change of culture. And again, I think it's significant that 6 of the sections of the settlement agreement have been jointly proposed by the Department of Corrections and supported by the Department of Justice and myself, because those things we've seen in the last 3 years have been now set as culture and as policy and following policy. And we expect that those things will continue, whether there's the settlement agreement specific to those sections or not. So again, I just want to take a moment and thank the people who are up on this stage. They lead what's happening down at the facility. And I think I'm open to questions later. Again, if you have more specifics, and using the link on the chat box. And I will now turn it over to, who am I supposed to?
Deputy Commissioner.
Deputy Commissioner Nardelli. There you go.
Good morning. My name is Erin Nardelli, and I am the Deputy Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Corrections. And I'm here today helping to represent the professional men and women of this department. Those stand up every day. They serve 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. Their life's work requires their bravery, their sacrifice, and very carefully considered actions at every turn. There is no planning and no policy, no change that could ever be accomplished without their buy-in. They are our doers and heavy lifters, but they are also our change makers. We thank them for their support and dedication to the safe operation of Edna Mahan Correctional Facility and for being committed themselves to reforms there. At Edna and in the NJDOC as a whole, we still maintain a zero tolerance for sexual abuse or harassment. We value the safety of incarcerated persons, and we ensure our procedures and practices remain guided by that mission. The department remains fully deployed with body-worn cameras in all correctional facilities, as well as our specialized units that are not situated in correctional institutions. We've made upgrades to equipment that was already existing, and we remain at the forefront of body-worn camera technology, which helps to ensure safety for all. We continue to refine our procedures to ensure compliance with relevant laws and guidelines, and we remain a resource to other states and government agencies in this regard. In 2023, Edna Mahan Correctional Facility, with an average population of under 400 incarcerated persons, recorded over 360,000 videos for over 30,000 hours of recordings on body-worn cameras alone. As of August 13th of 2024, Edna had nearly 229,000 videos recorded, with approximately 20,000 hours of video on body-worn camera. This year, the department has also reimagined its healthcare compliance unit and has created stringent auditing processes that are producing the results, corrective actions, and the responsiveness that we're looking for. The healthcare compliance unit conducted both gynecological services and mammogram audits in 2024, with continued monitoring underway. In addition, the following statewide audits, which include Edna Mahan Correctional Facility, have been conducted so far this year: infirmary care, endocrinology, chronic care, physicals, nurse sick call, x-ray orders, extended care, nurse protocols, pulmonary care, mental health, oncology, dental continuity of care, specialty consults, and intake procedures. Further, the healthcare compliance unit has reviewed our healthcare contract, ensured appropriate staffing in both quality assurance and laboratory services, work to expand telehealth opportunities, increase the individualized treatment of chronic diseases, and revamped system-wide standards. We also remain at the forefront and are relied upon in support of our partners throughout the nation in correctional mental health. The Division of Operations maintains strategic visioning for appropriate management of bed space. We are deeply involved in the planning of the new women's correctional facility, and we are working with Women's Services and the institution to take a deep dive into Edna Mahan Correctional Facility commissary offerings to ensure there is equity in access to products. With regard to staffing, though law enforcement across the United States is experiencing staffing shortages, the Division of Operations is assisting in any area we can to bolster recruitment, and specifically bolster recruitment to staff at Edna. For the most recent academy class, both the Division of Operations and Edna Mahan Correctional Facility staff presented to the class and outlined the benefits of seeking to begin their career at Edna Mahan Correctional Facility. Edna Mahan staff then met with all female recruits to answer any specific questions they might have had with regard to employment at that institution. During this reporting period, incarcerated persons' access to video visitation remains expanded. At Edna, we have 5 opportunities, 5 days per week, for a total of 65 per week in all general population settings, and sessions are available in the AM, PM, and the evenings. Edna remains in full compliance with the Dignity for Incarcerated Primary Caretaker Parents Act, offering visitation 6 days per week, in addition to the various specialized visits that occur at the facility. And with that, I'd like to introduce Chief of Staff Jabanko. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Christina Jabanko. I'm the Chief of Staff for the New Jersey Department of Corrections. Staffing at Edna has been and continues to be a priority for our administration. Staffing levels are continuously monitored and evaluated, and the department's efforts to increase the number of officers, including female officers, is ongoing through efforts focused on recruitment and retention. The New Jersey Department of Corrections continues to follow the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility Recruitment and Retention Plan for women correctional officers. We are leveraging various platforms such as social media, online recruiting sites, and internal wellness programs to recruit and retain officers. The Serve with Honor, Protect with Pride recruitment campaign launched in May of 2024, which included a dedicated recruitment website, digital advertising, billboards, social media, paid search, and targeted online ads. Also, was advertising on streaming audio, video, and NJ Transit. In addition to our paid recruitment campaign, our recruitment staff routinely attend recruitment events, job fairs, educational institutions, vocational programs, and public events throughout New Jersey and our neighboring Pennsylvania and New York. Between March and September of this year, our recruitment team attended 15 career fairs, visited over 20 high schools and vocational high schools, and visited approximately 10 colleges, all in the geographic area surrounding Edna Mahan Correctional Facility, in addition to their attendance at numerous other events throughout the state. The department has bolstered its recruitment efforts over the last 2.5 years, where we've been able to hire directly outside the civil service process. The graduation numbers have steadily increased and continue to do so. Last month, DOC graduated class 256 with 96 recruits, which was our 4th non-civil service class. It was also the first academy that was residential optional, allowing our trainees the option to go home at the end of each day, which provided greater flexibility to those with obligations at home. Class 257, also with a non-residential option, begins this upcoming Monday, September 16th, and will be larger than the previous classes. The recruitment unit has also begun the processing for class 258, which is scheduled to begin in March of 2025. For those individuals applying, they will continue to receive the benefit of having our mentorship program work with them through the hiring process and throughout their time at the academy. The department will also like to note that it continues to maintain the lowest attrition rate since 2012, when the department began tracking this data. Additionally, the department holds staff professionalism, and wellness strategic planning meetings to evaluate goal progress. These meetings are instrumental in ensuring that our commitment to the well-being of our staff is continually assessed and aligned with our department objectives. I'd like to thank Commissioner Kuhn and Ms. Parnell for allowing me the opportunity to provide an update on the department's recruitment and retention efforts. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Assistant Commissioner Helena Tomei.
Thank you and good morning. I am Elena Tomei, and I thank you for joining us at today's public meeting. Since our last update, we have remained on course in our commitment to quality improvement and have continued to advance the enhancements and changes we've been working on over the past 3 years. Our dedication to achieving full compliance with the settlement agreement has not wavered, and we are committed not only to meeting the requirements of the agreement, but also, as Ms. Parnell just stated, focused on doing things because they're the right things to do to foster a culture of sustained success, not just to complete that checklist. However, in terms of the settlement agreement, as the coordinator of the agreement, I want to emphasize that accountability is central to our mission. Over the past reporting period, we have provided required verification information, maintained ongoing communication with the Federal Monitor and the Department of Justice, as well as delivered the semi-annual status report and other reports as needed. Additionally, we have adopted new policies and submitted a comprehensive training plan to ensure that all staff are up to date with the latest knowledge and changes. We continue to provide ongoing training for our custody, civilian, and investigation staff, as well as volunteers and contractors. Our training efforts have been significant this reporting period and include an 8-hour refresher course on gender-responsive approaches for women offenders, completed by 100 participants. A 16-hour initial course on gender-responsive approaches for staff who have recently arrived at Edna, and PREA sexual safety training and retraining completed by 284 individuals. I'd also like to provide an overview of recent reports regarding investigations into sexual abuse. During this period, we reported 20 allegations of sexual abuse and 2 claims of retaliation to both the Federal Monitor and the Department of Justice. Of these cases, 17 are pending required review by the prosecutor's office, 2 are active investigations, and 3 have been closed by the Special Investigation Division's Special Victims Unit. In addition to our compliance efforts, we continue to celebrate achievements and positive behavior through incentive-based activities and special events. We are particularly grateful for the support of our wonderful presenters in the Empowering Women Speaker Series. Recent presentations included Dr. Jamila Davis with Built to Outlast the Storm, Lakeisha Yuri speaking on moving from trauma to trust, steps to rebuilding, Bernai Holman discussing uncovering our superpowers for empowered well-being, and impactful sessions from Safe and Hunterdon for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I'm also excited to share that our newsletter that was created by and for the women of Edna Mahan, entitled Perceptions Reimagined, has received recognition from the Society of Professional Journalists as the 2nd place winner of the New Prison Publication of the Year award. This honor reflects the exceptional quality and impact of their publication. Their creativity and dedication, of which they are rightfully proud, are truly commendable. Looking ahead, I am also happy to announce that this November, the Visual Arts Center of New Jersey will unveil newly renovated gallery spaces with a series of profound exhibits. The exhibition, titled Something to Hold On to, Art and the Carceral System, will feature artwork from individuals affected by the criminal legal system, both in New Jersey and nationwide. Running through January 26, 2025, these displays will highlight the vital role of art in self-expression, agency, and advocacy. The main gallery and the community gallery will showcase remarkable pieces by 6 artists from Edna Mahan. In closing, I want to reaffirm our commitment to the principles of safety, continuous improvement, accountability, gender responsivity, and rehabilitation that drive our mission. Now, I am pleased to introduce Mr. Ryan O'Day, the administrator of the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility.
Thank you, AC Tomei. Good morning. My name is Ryan O'Day. I am the administrator of Edna Mahan Correctional Facility, and this is the 4th federal monitors reporting period under my leadership at Edna. During the last reporting period, we continued to focus on communication, retaliation, and limited English proficient incarcerated persons. Communication. Edna Facility Administration utilizes several methods to achieve communication with the population. Incarcerated Person Liaison Monthly Meetings. This monthly meeting provides the population with an opportunity to address concerns like conditions of confinement, recreation and activities, and commissary concerns, to name a few. This meeting is attended by an assortment of facility department heads, facility majors, and the administrator. We also conduct IP monthly focus groups hosted by NJDOC leadership. These meetings provide the population with a unique access to the highest levels of the department, as well as other government representatives. Additionally, a monthly pre-and newsletter is distributed, one to staff and one to IPs. It provides information, education, updates, and clarifications on standards, policies, and expectations. We engage our staff through focus groups, department head meetings, labor union meetings, and drop-ins with the administrator. LEP, New Jersey Department of Corrections, has taken steps to ensure effective communication with all incarcerated persons as mandated by Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This includes providing orientation materials in accessible formats to accommodate diverse needs such as limited English proficiency. Interpreter assistance is readily available at EMCF through phone interpretation services, also known as the language line, covering approximately 173 languages when in-person interpretation is unavailable. Additionally, a certified bilingual staff member was appointed since August 27th, 2022, assists with interpretation in Spanish and English, as confirmed by the DOJ. Healthcare provider has also certified a bilingual staff member, and this was confirmed by documentation provided to Federal Monitor and DOJ. To promptly notify staff and contractors of incarcerated persons requiring LEP interpretation services, our assistant superintendent distributes a weekly list to relevant personnel. Stickers indicating LEP status are affixed to incarcerated persons' identification cards for easy recognition. Retaliation. NJDOC implements various personalized protection measures to prevent potential retaliation. These measures include housing unit changes, continuous video surveillance, and separating alleged abusers from victims. Additionally, emotional support services are available to address concerns about retaliation. Departmental policies emphasize safeguards against retaliation and require monitoring for potential retaliatory actions. Oversight falls under the institutional PREA compliance manager, who conducts regular status checks and paper reviews for at least 90 days post-allegation. Disciplinary action is taken against anyone found to have retaliated. Monitoring for potential retaliation exists for both victim and individual who report the incident. Third-party reporting by incarcerated persons or staff who directly witness incidents is also considered. To address emotional support services, incarcerated persons can use the star PREA pound number on the incarcerated person's phone system, connecting them with Safe 100. For staff members, confidential emotional support services are available through the 8884 Blue NJ hotline. Additionally, staff members have confidential reporting routes for allegations of sexual abuse or harassment. The NJDOC takes retaliation seriously and has enhanced communication to ensure everyone is informed. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce Edna Mahan Board of Trustees member Bonnie Kerness, and she'll be joining us virtually.
Good morning, everyone. Am I being heard? Am I being heard?
Bonnie, if you're able to hear us, can you turn on your mic? Oh, man. Okay. Gentlemen, if she were to log back out and log back in, do you think that that may be a possibility? Bonnie, I'm hearing that it may be a possibility to log back out and log back in, and then perhaps in the meantime, so that we are not putting you on the spot, can we pivot to Q&A and then come back to Bonnie before it's over?
Absolutely.
Bonnie, is that okay with you? Okay, I see nodding, and I think I read lips perfect, so. Jane, if you're comfortable, maybe we'll move on to Q&A.
See. All right. How do I get? Since the first question, since the full minimum unit closed last year and many of the women moved to the satellite unit, the department provide an update on that progress.
I'm happy to. And maybe I can just give a condensed version of what I spoke to in my opening remarks. So since the satellite has been closed a year ago, from the Edna Main and the Edna satellite perspective, we are still in both locations. And both are running efficiently. There is no question, if you were to take a tour around the Edna Main facility, it is dilapidated, it needs to be closed. The Edna satellite is a temporary facility. We are, making best use of the space, but there is no question that it is not the ideal space for housing women on a permanent basis. In terms of the next facility, and for those of you that may have logged in a little later, in June of this year, the request for proposals for the architect and the engineer were made public. The publication resulted in a significant number of vendors responding. Those vendors were given an opportunity to conduct a walkthrough at the site of the building site for the next facility. And then we are currently in the process of design proposals and construction management proposals are both due prior to the end of October for the new facility. In-person interviews and presentations will be conducted before the end of November. And then once all that concludes, we finally have the ability to sit down and select the vendor for the design and for the construction management for the next female facility. So Jane, in a nutshell, that's where we are with the next facility. It is moving forward and it is a priority for the group and for Treasury and DPMC.
Administrator O'Day, can you talk more, just in terms of the details? What kind of programs are offered at the satellite building? When do they have to return to the main campus for what activities? And so could you just go through the day-to-day kind of activities with us?
Sure. So the goal was to mirror what we have provided at the main facility. So as many programs as we possibly could, we brought over to the satellite, which reduced the need for transport back and forth. There may be some specialized medical need to come back to the main facility, particularly dental, ophthalmology, because equipment, we don't have those types of equipment at the satellite. So those are some of the few that will need to go back. We have mobile X-ray that comes on site at the satellite. Regular provider appointments take place there. We have nurse calls that take place on site. Physical therapy is provided there at the satellite as well. And when it comes to the programming side, we mirror almost everything that we have back at the main compound, with exception to some of the vocational programs that have heavier equipment that's required for training purposes. So the goal was to reduce that need for transport, and we've come pretty close to achieving that.
And I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we have Dr. Sessoms with us as well, who oversees the entire Division of Programs and Reintegration Services and was needed to be a significant partner in the efforts, to ensure that we were able to provide appropriate services. So I would love to hear from Dr. Sessoms as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think Administrator O'Day summed it up pretty well, that we do attempt to mirror in both campuses what we offer, but on the at satellite, we are limited due to vocational space. There's another question about education, so I was trying to hold off. I wasn't sure when I.
Why don't you go ahead and answer that one now?
So in the chat, there's a question that says, what type of educational opportunities that result in diplomas, certificates, undergraduate degrees, and advanced degrees for women? We are proud in the New Jersey Department of Corrections to be a member of NJ STEP. NJ STEP is our consortium higher ed partners for all things college degrees. So we offer an associate's degree program. The degree conferring institution of higher learning is Raritan Valley Community College. We offer a bachelor's degree program. The conferring degree college is Rutgers University. And we're in the process now of developing postgraduate continuing education course opportunities. These are courses that are not covered under Pell, so they would be on continuing education opportunities that we're working through with Rutgers University for those who have already obtained their bachelor's degree.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a question that says, I appreciate the department's expanded use of body-worn cameras. However, has the department finalized its body-worn camera policy, and can this policy be shared?
So how about I start and I turn that over to you? So Juan Carlos, thank you for the question. I know, we've spoken about this before. I can have our executive director, Dan Spraza, reach out to you directly in terms of sharing. So the easy answer is yes, we absolutely can share where we are. And then Deputy Commissioner, how about in terms of finalizing a BWC policy?
Sure. So we call it an internal management procedure, a level 1 internal management procedure. It has been drafted, approved, and finalized. As with any procedure, there are revisions that have to be made either annually or as changes occur or as you refine your procedures. We do have a couple of revisions pending, but the policy is in place, is finalized, is distributed throughout the facilities, and it's fully compliant with the Office of Attorney General body-worn camera policy that's publicly available on that website as well. And I can work with External Affairs to get you a copy.
Excellent. Thank you. What are some of the accomplishments that the Department of Corrections is most proud of since this last meeting?
I think there are so many, and they come from so many different levels as well. Even specific to Edna, they still come from so many levels. I think from the higher level, what I see is you feel the cultural change when you step onto the grounds of Edna. You feel it from the staff. I know they feel heard. There is a sense of stability and accountability at the facility from the women. It's not just you feel, they will tell you that the department's position of a zero tolerance for sexual safety is not just a check the box. We are living it every day. We are checking it. We're all there walking around and listening. So from that perspective, the reasons why this consent decree is in place, I think one of the sense of accomplishment that I feel is that we are at that place where we have not just checked the box, we are seeking the court to sunset provisions because we believe it and because the staff believes it, because the women that are there believe it, and it's sustained cultural change. But I know that there are individual pieces that happen on a daily basis that I'm sure everybody else at the table are very proud of.
So let's start and just ask. We'll start with you, Administrator O'Day. What are you most proud of?
I'll have to say, from a personal perspective and within the facility, I'm proud of the staff. This is a lot to digest for them. And it's, we discussed this yesterday. We put these policies in place. There's a lot of change very quickly. And it seems like this is beginning to sink in. It's becoming routine for our staff. The policies are understood. And it doesn't feel like a task. It's like, this is how we operate now. This is how we work. And I think that was the goal initially. And I think we're getting there.
I think we were on the same wavelength. So there's so many things, and we talked about a lot of them earlier in our presentations. And it's not quantifiable, but definitely that team that we have there, because a lot has changed. But the team that we have now, they're not stale. It's not, well, that's the way that it is. They have demonstrated a willingness to try something different. And sometimes that's a little bit different and difficult in a setting. But they have demonstrated that, and you can feel a change. And you can feel a change when you talk to the women as well.
So from the Division of Ops, there's a few areas. I would say progress on procedure development, because a lot of the procedures we developed for Edna have spurred standardization and change throughout the department. So that has actually been a big help for other facilities. I would say in the Division of Ops, we changed our hiring practices in terms of administrative and leadership staff at the women's facility. And it has been, a huge tool in providing that stability and providing that buy-in and picking the right people that meet the special needs of that facility. So that's been really helpful for us, especially as we continue to plan to build continuity between administrative and leadership staff. I would say a change that's occurred in the Division of Operations is that we're much more involved in helping with recruitment and retention. Traditionally, recruitment and retention was the academy and your training departments. And I think we've learned that it takes everyone. So all of our staff, from our line staff through the commissioner, we are all involved in recruitment and retention, and results are happening from it. And then for us, finally making a lot of progress on the design and planning the scope for this new facility, and involving a number of individuals as we plan it so we can get it right.
Thank you.
I think for the Division of Programs and Reintegration Services, the first thing I would say is the expansion of our community-based partners to include 7 that are dedicated solely to the provision of post-release services for women who are leaving Edna Mahan. And of the 7 agencies, 2 of them are female CEOs who were formerly justice involved. And so we're super proud of that, super proud of the ability to have them come in and be the credible messengers that the women appreciate. I think the second thing, although it's probably the first in terms of my priority and most proud of, is the change of the understanding of trauma and the incarcerated person, and what the global impact is regarding trauma. This sense of the narrative of gender responsive and gender reform solely being limited to just gender. We push very heavily on the cultural impact, because as women, we're not monolithic in our problems or thinking. The expansion of having our higher level leaders in our division conduct listening groups in Spanish. We do have an assistant commissioner who speaks Spanish fluently, so she has gone to the institution and met with the women. And they were very appreciative of knowing that there's someone who is higher up who actually speaks their language. And continuing to expand on the issue of language, looking at providing services by representatives who represent the culture in which the women come from, particularly the Southeast Asian culture is very important. So those are just a few of the things I think I'm proud of for the last 6 months.
Thank you.
Anything, Chief? I would say that with the help of the governor's office, the increase in salaries for our officers to help give them more competitive benefits and their wellness initiatives have really shown that the officers now, when you go through the positivity that they have for the job, the low retention rates, that, you know, we're maintaining people, we're attracting people, and you can tell that the officers, when you walk through, you know, that they're positive, you know, everything positive that they have to say when you come through now.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me because you can sit in the stage and they're all the administrators and, you know, I appreciate that. But when we go down and talk to the staff and the incarcerated persons, that's where really, you know, many of the accomplishments you're talking about now really do hit down at the level of coming to work and mandatory overtimes as an example. You know, you can talk and hear the work that's been done with the recruitment and retention. But when you get out and you say to the person, how many times did you have to be mandatory overtime so that you missed your child's birthday party, or you weren't able to go watch a game or do something that you had scheduled because there wasn't somebody to cover that post. And that is turning around. And there, now, what I was told is that if you're doing overtime at this point, at Edna, because you're choosing to, not because you're mandatory. So that's great progress. And I'm very proud of that because I'm happy for living that experience of not being able to go home when you wanted to. So thank you. Thanks for that question and great answers. Can the department provide more details on how incarcerated women are educated on PREA manners? I guess we're looking all at you.
So many ways. So we have a full-time institutional PREA manager, she is just phenomenal. So she does PREA orientation for everyone who comes in. She then runs voluntary groups for further education. She sends out monthly newsletters to the population as well as to the staff, because it's important to make sure that everyone is aware of any update or any information. She is always out walking and talking. She does one-on-one meetings. Every day on the television, we have a video that runs for all of the IPs to give them information about sexual safety. Am I missing anything? She is just.
Did you talk about orientation? That she
Orientation, yes.
And the video is in Spanish as well.
Spanish and English.
Yeah. And they get inmate handbooks that are incarcerated
In the
person in
language
the
they-
language in the language that they speak, their primary language, and that talks about how to report incidents. Hey, it's my job. This question follows up a little bit, and it's what resources are available to incarcerated persons to report potential allegations of PREA issues? And that's a question we ask them, by the way, every time we talk with them, every 6 months, we say, how would you report?
They can report to any staff member, volunteer that they can call the SID confidential tip line. They can reach out to the ombudsperson's office. They can report it anonymously. They can tell someone that they trust and have a third-party report that comes in. So various avenues to be able to report.
There used to be a link on the website. Is that still on there? Do we know? That if a family member wanted to report?
They have the
They have the
information on
information
our
on the
website for
website?
anyone. Yes.
Okay. You'll like this question, Commissioner Kuhn, because when Deputy Commissioner Nardelli was saying from the top down, we are recruiting, I remember about 2 or 3 sessions ago when Commissioner Kuhn was like, anybody out there want to apply? And so the question is there a pathway for county correctional police to transfer to Edna specific job placement? Isn't that a great question?
Yes, it is. And we do get those questions. The chief of staff, I think you answer that regularly.
Yes. There are civil service rules in place for transfers. We'd have to follow that if that's one avenue that HR could help, aid. And then there would also be, a reapplication process that they would have to go through with, some additional training.
Jane, I don't want to lose whomever's on the line asking that question. So please reach back out to us. And if you have any friends, have them reach out to us as well. We are putting into place our next academy classes.
And then, which I think is a great one, and I'm going to pursue this afterwards, and that is there an incentive for female transfers?
Other than having the opportunity to work with us on a regular.
That's the incentive right there.
And coming to join an excellent organization. In terms of financial benefit that's given to females or female transfers joining the academy, no. There is no gender distinction between, but we do incentivize joining the academy by, if you join the academy, there's a lot of expenses that a recruit joining the academy has, in terms of purchasing uniform pieces and those pieces. So we do now reimburse at the NJDOC those who successfully graduate at the end of the academy.
And truly, the incentive would be to work with Administrator O'Day and team there.
Say that we do when we speak to the female recruits, and of course, if there's any other individuals that would want to speak to us about what it's like to work at Edna, there are benefits to working at a female facility, to working at a facility of that size, to working at a facility with that culture and that level of communication, that are some intangibles, but that benefit staff. And we're always open to speak to people that might be interested.
So again, I'm going to echo Commissioner Kuhn. If you truly are interested, please follow up with anybody on this panel and we will get you to the right person. One of the things that Bonnie wanted to mention is that in terms of the question of how can incarcerated persons report, Bonnie wanted to mention that they could also report to the Board of Trustees, that they have email addresses. Quite honestly, in each of the units, there is a phone number for the Department of Justice as well. So there's just a multitude of ways that people can report any kind of allegation of sexual harassment or sexual abuse. The question is, what is the forecast for the next 5 to 10 years involving Edna Mahan's correctional facility concerning population moves and services?
So I love that question because we are all about, if I think I say the word strategic planning around here one more time, somebody's going to beat me off the stage. But we are all about strategic planning and looking forward to, what can we accomplish in the next 6 months, year, 5 years, pushing out to 10 years, knowing at that point, we're really making legacy plans, for individuals who would come after us and, after the Murphy administration. I think it really takes two tracks, Jane. There is the physical plant track and the planning for the physical plant track and where we are with the build of the next new female facility and keeping that going on the expedited basis that we have that going right now. And whether that is, 2 to 3 years to 4 years out, it's keeping that on the rails. And then while that's happening, ensuring that our physical plant is still functioning properly so that we are providing that second piece of the question, the services, the education, the trauma services, the medical services, all of those things that we should be providing. And then again, both tracks again at the current facility, and then having the opportunity to develop the next facility around the ideas for both continuing what works in terms of services and programming and medical and expanding those areas. Like this is our chance to build that physical structure to account for vocational training or, other types of treatment. But I'd love to hear from the panel as well, because the physical part, we know what we need to do, the 5 to 10 year planning for all things services and programming. I think everyone has a lot of ideas where we're going in that regard. Why don't I just pass it down the line, Deb?
So in terms of strategic planning, we do, a lot of, through our classification unit and division of ops, tracking of population trends, length of sentences, sort of stability we can expect, custody statuses. So we plan for that. We watch that. We are working with that. And as we develop this new facility to make sure that we have what we need, what was missed over the last few decades, and where we see more specialized populations coming into the department and their specialized needs, to make sure that we have space, appropriate housing for those areas. And then we rely on our partners on the other side of our DOC house to tell us, listen, this is something that we need to focus on, and you need to change operations to make sure that we can accommodate that. And we have a really good working relationship where I can say, oh, okay, let me wrap my head around this and figure out how to accomplish that new goal. And that's where we rely on DPRS to really guide us in the service needs and the program needs and the rehabilitative and reintegration needs of the women. And we provide the structure for that.
I guess for me, in 5 years, first and foremost would be technology. If you really want to see us expand, that will come by way of technology. You're talking about internet access, virtual training opportunities, virtual counseling opportunities. So I am hopeful that as a part of the building of the new facility, that it will have those items that are necessary to move us into the 21st century, to help us offer services in a manner that's very consistent with the way you can offer them out in the community.
Good.
I will say, just from a monitor standpoint, and we spoke about this yesterday afternoon, and that is that those processes that are being put in place right now, we want to see to continue. We want to see it 5 to 10 years from now. And again, I can say from my experience, that happened in the prison or the facility I was working in Washington State. And so what we're trying to do now is to begin looking at when we're not here anymore, and the Department of Justice isn't coming and the federal monitor isn't coming every 6 months and looking at things. How will we know that those processes are continuing? And those are some of the policies that Deputy Commissioner Nardelli spoke about, both statewide policies and then those policies that are specific to Edna. Those are those processes. Those are those people. because people will come and go. And so how will the culture stay, remain the same and continue to move? And how do we make sure it doesn't go back to, what originally brought us here?
And if I can speak to that
Yes,
for a second, because I know we have some folks joining.
Yes.
Us, including Juan Carlos. There are legislators that we have approached to assist with that as well, because we know we're not going to be here forever. You take this position, it's temporary. You want to see those reform measures continue. Now, that doesn't necessarily translate to cultural change, right? But we can have legislators assist us, and they've been fantastic in doing this. When we approached them to assist us with an incarcerated women's Bill of Rights, no one turned us away. It was tell us more. And these reform measures that are being put into place, that at some point when the consent decree sunsets, that law should still be in place. So you still have those protections that the Department of Corrections will need to abide by in perpetuity.
Exactly. There's a question that, would you please explain initiatives and efforts to maintain family and parental relationships throughout the Department of Corrections, and then specifically at Edna?
Absolutely. There are so many, and I'm going to actually look to some of the experts here, but I think folks have heard us say before, family unification and the voices of the family are so important to the development of, quite frankly, everyone who is with us, and the women are no exception. And unification with their children is no exception. And the Dignity Act that the Deputy Commissioner referenced earlier also helps, right, to ensure that those pieces are going to be in place. But for the Department of Corrections, there's many layers to that. And like I said, I'll turn it over in terms of in-person visits and how you get folks to the facility, because the location is a little challenging. The next location hopefully will be less so. But then supplementing that with video visits and phone calls and emails and, letter writing. You try to build the best possible opportunity for the families to be able to stay connected and unified with their loved ones in prison. But is there anything specific that you'd like to mention?
Well, you covered nearly all, but we have our traditional visits, our in-person visits. We foster a lot of specialized visits from specialized individuals that might come in either from religious services or outreach groups, healthcare. We have, with our new vendor and our new tablet system, we should have expanded telephone access because they'll have their individual access. The commissioner has also stood up a family group throughout the state where certain family members can be part of this group that get to speak to us on a regular basis, where we address some of those family unification issues. And then through our DPRS, they have their own specialized visits that they conduct.
We conduct the Mother-Child Visitation Specialized Program, which actually provides transportation of the children to the correctional facility to see their mother. And that goes from infants all the way up until the actual person gets their driver's license. And we offer other psychoeducational programs around family reunification and parenting.
Oh,
Yeah, I'd just like
Yeah.
to add to what the
Please.
Commissioner said about video visits. So the department was able to expand video visitation hours for the females to evening hours, which was a great benefit to the population. Gives, some of the mothers at the facility the opportunity to see kids after they get out of school and those later hours of the day. So that was a huge help.
Nice. I want to read, Bonnie was not able to connect. Apparently, there is still some technical difficulties that we're all so used to. Not used to in terms of, we just aware that technology doesn't always work when the times that we wish it would the most. But Bonnie writes, my apologies to the panel and audience. The Board of Trustees has been a part of and has witnessed the amazing positive changes at Edna. Members of the board at Edna or visit Edna are at Edna at least once a week, freely moving into any unit, speaking to any individual or group privately. We are committed to monitoring and addressing the ongoing challenges and issues, and this is unique nationwide. So Commissioner, I'm just going to ask you if you can just explain the role of the board and how they have helped make contribute to the positive changes we've seen.
So I know you've heard me say it, everyone has heard me say it, the stakeholders that are joining us have heard me say it, that we needed to bring all of the voices to the table. We call it the better together approach. It's in order to be able to effectuate change, if change is necessary, you need to be hearing from all parties. The board, I am so grateful to the Board of Trustees. They are a unique blend of very powerful women in the state of New Jersey that come from very different areas of expertise, and they're able to bring their expertise together, bring that to Edna. And they're really a voice for their areas of expertise in the community, to be a resource to the women at Edna, to be a resource to the staff at Edna, and to be a link for all of us, sitting here, all of us in administration, senior staff, to be liaisons with us and really to hold us accountable sometimes too. Bonnie, as I'm going to speak about Bonnie specifically for a second, Bonnie and I sometimes have two tin cans in a string, and it's not just about Edna, it may be about, but because of the position that she has in the community and because of the ear that she has in the community, she's able to reach out to say, I'm hearing this. I don't know if it's true, but I think you need to be hearing this as well. Can you look into this? It might be about Edna, it might be about another facility. And when we have educators and we have members of LGBTQ community, when we are having some new board members join the board that come from the medical community, they bring these very unique backgrounds and experiences, and they're able to share that with us and hold us accountable for what we're doing at the facility.
And I should say I echo that is unique to the state. And I would like to see that in many other states. It's really a nice model. There is another question that says, what are the challenges each department is still experiencing and working on?
Can I start?
Yeah.
How much time do we have? No, I think probably I would recognize the two largest challenges for the department from big picture perspective is still staffing. We've spoken that we're turning the corner, that we're trending in the right direction, but sitting in the seat, I don't like to see anybody doing mandatory overtime. I recall the days, I've been in and around this department for a long time, but I recall the days where staff would battle over the bucket of overtime. I want the overtime. We're not there. We still have facilities where there's far too much mandatory overtime, and you want people to be able to balance, work life. You need that work life balance. So I'm proud of the effort that's being made and taken in terms of recruitment and retention. We are developing the largest classes that we've had in a very long time, and our retention rate is the lowest that it's been in well over a decade, but there's still work to do in that regard. And we really do have to, because we inherited a large deficit in terms of staffing. So we really need to keep chipping away at that deficit. For me, that would be number one. And for number two, it's just across the board infrastructure in the NJDOC. We are very fortunate. I am so incredibly grateful that we are constructing a new facility for the women. But we have 8 other facilities, and not all 8 are crumbling, but there's a significant number of facilities that have, relatively large infrastructure issues. And again, we've been very vocal about it, vocal during budget. We have received, a fair amount of support in terms of capital and capital construction to begin to chip away at that. But that is a daily issue that we're all contending with. On any given day, the phone call comes. about infrastructure. And Jane, to that end, there's a number of laws that have been passed that require certain things, and these facilities weren't necessarily constructed in the 1800s and the early 1900s to accommodate some of those things. So sometimes you are fitting, a square peg into a round hole, and trying to modify a facility to be able to meet certain requirements. So those are challenges that I see that we meet on a regular basis to address, but I'm sure folks have many other challenges.
Well, I would echo those two as the top two for the Division of Operations, and then technology. Really, it piggybacks upon infrastructure because we don't have a significant amount of tech infrastructure, and we're building it and we're working hard on it, but all of it requires investment and funding.
The commissioner spoke of staffing and addressed it from a custody perspective, but I would like to just make sure we, share space with staffing from a civilian perspective. Talk about certified teachers, licensed and credentialed therapists and counselors. That's still a big challenge for recruiting at Edna Mahan, Route 78 West, kind of off the beaten path for most professionals to travel. So for us, that's a big challenge, certified teachers and therapists. And it dovetails with infrastructure, but just space. Every single room that we have at Edna, we use for programming, to the point where people are fighting over programming space. And so you can only offer programs with the space that you have. So there's no room to add because you're already trying to accommodate what you already have. So that does stifle growth to some extent. But as always, we do our best to work around things.
And that's where the beauty of the new build comes in, because you're able to take those pieces into consideration.
And plan for those, yes. Pretty typically, women's facilities use more program space. Very typically throughout the United States. And part of that is that just women are more social, right? And so they're more apt to involve themselves in programming and those kinds. Quite honestly, a lot of volunteers often will come to women's facilities before they come to men's facilities. And so you have the volunteer space on top of programming space. And so it's so exciting to be able to have a new facility where you can plan for those things. Let's look down here on operations, down to the level. What are some of your challenges still?
So I'm going to share some of the same views that Commissioner had expressed, and that's staffing. However, we just received 9 brand new recruits from the academy, and I think there's been an instant impact. So we're grateful for that, and I'm optimistic. I see it, with the numbers of interest in recruits and the class sizes going up and the frequency of classes. I think this is gonna benefit the whole department, and especially impacted pretty quickly by this small group. So if we see this continue, it makes everything else that much easier to accomplish.
And I absolutely agree with everything everyone has said, but also in terms of space, not just for that programming space, I'd really look to be able to create specialized housing areas, for the women to build those relationships. And we're not able to do that at this time. Again, the beauty of being able to plan ahead. And bringing more people in, community stakeholders, community providers who are interested to speak to those women. I mean, I mentioned when I spoke about the Empowering Women speaker series, our presenters have been absolutely amazing, and just bringing folks in who are interested to speak, it is just so valuable. So that's it.
Well, I will kind of summarize and then let Commissioner Kuhn finalize, but I think it would be negligent on my part if I didn't say that I'm still concerned about staffing. I truly do appreciate the efforts that we've seen in the last 6 months or most particularly the efforts of the recruitment and retention team that have been doing efforts for a long time, and they're finally coming. And we're seeing the results. And still, from the monitor's point of view, from the Department of Justice point of view, we are particularly with women. In the last 3 years, Edna has lost 28 female staff. And so we're getting some, but we're losing more. The facility is losing more. And that is one of the specifics of the conditions of the settlement agreement, was to bring more female staff in. So that's an area from my perspective that still needs a lot of work, a lot of attention. And that, quite honestly, we're worried that, or I'm worried that that's one of those areas that might get overlooked when the settlement agreement goes away, that we will lose, the net gain for women will continue to decline. So that's an area that I appreciate the efforts that the department has made, and I will still continue to nag them. And you will hear it in my nagging, that's got to be one of the areas of priority for Edna, it's female staff.
Yeah, Jane, there are things that I want to say about that. You know that I'm being careful with what I say about that. Sometimes there are outside influences on the department that limit who we're able to bring into the academy. So we are addressing that as gingerly as we can.
Fair enough, fair enough. And to be fair, there are lots of influences that, are beyond Edna, or beyond the Department of Corrections. There are so many influences, as you talk about, laws that maybe are passed, or are things that you have been pretty creative in some ways of working around some of those things. And I think that brings us to the end of the questions.
Right, very good. So I do not want to put Bonnie Kerness on the spot, but I did promise that I would circle back to see if we were able to connect virtually again. So Bonnie, why don't I see how we look from a virtual perspective? I want to indicate that we're pleased with. Are we working? Are we good? Bonnie, I think we're good.
No.
That was you.
I'm sorry. It was wishful thinking. Okay, so back to concluding for today. We're pleased with the progress. We're thankful for all of you that are joining us today. We are thankful for all of the support that we get. It comes from so many areas, both inside the Department of Corrections and staff and our experts. It comes from the outside and the stakeholders and the families. It comes from, the voices of the women. It comes from our legislators and our governor's office. And it really does, I know it's an old adage, it takes a village, but it really does take a village to sustain change. And we appreciate the support that we're receiving. So thank you to all of you that helped make this happen this morning. We appreciate the assistance, and we have the ability to do this again in 6 months. I believe we are slated for March of 2025.
Oh, my.
Right. Sounds so far. It's not. It's not. Thank you all for joining us this morning.